I think most people confuse the terms absorption, digestion, um, assimilation, incorporation, and what maximizes muscle protein synthesis and what maximizes whole body protein synthesis. And they're
I'm
all
conf
slightly different.
I'm confused already with all these terms.
Absolutely, and most people are.
What's your general thoughts about protein body absorption? Is there a quantity that the body can take, and is there a limit of this quantity or not?
Good question. I think most people confuse the terms absorption, digestion, um, assimilation, incorporation, and what maximizes muscle protein synthesis and what maximizes whole body protein synthesis. And they're all slightly different.
I'm confused already with all these terms.
Absolutely, and most people are. So from a digestion and absorption, and does it actually do something in our body and appear in the bloodstream and contribute to our metabolism? It's almost perfect. We're very effective at digesting things. So if you're asking, am I going to get the calories or the metabolic effects of eating protein? You'll get, man, if you eat a giant steak, you get all of it. Now, the thing is that we have a storage form for excess fat and excess carbohydrate. We've got glycogen that we should store in our bodies, and we have adipose tissue. When we take on more protein than our body can assimilate, however, it gets converted to something else. We upregulate gluconeogenesis in the liver so that we turn protein into energy. More of the amino acids which can get used directly in muscle are used for energy. We can see big ramp ups in what we do with protein and oxidation and using it for energy. But there's only so much that we can use for building muscle or repairing tissues or repairing organs, et cetera, et cetera. And even when you look at athletes with a very high demand, for example, there's been some recent studies where they looked at the protein requirement of bodybuilders on an off day. And the mean requirement was around 1.7 grams per kg with the upper end of the confidence threshold. So the highest we think it could be statistically around 2.2 grams per kg or 1 gram per pound. So that's over the course of a day. And that matches up nicely with what we've seen in a meta-analysis recently by Morton and colleagues that I had the privilege of being a part of, where again, the mean where people stop benefiting for strength or hypertrophy in this meta was 1.6, and the upper end of that confidence interval was 2.2, which is typically the range I recommend because there's no real harm in overdoing protein in a non-clinical population. But on a per meal basis, it depends on have you trained recently, and is there a sink for protein to go into? So for example, if you're regularly training, you'll see skeletal muscle protein synthesis will be upregulated and more protein will be shuttled towards that. And depending on how much you trained, how many body parts you trained, that might be a ceiling of around 20 grams of high quality protein or around 40 grams of high quality protein if you did a pretty comprehensive full body workout. But that's at one given time. But the remodeling process seems to continue. That's again related to when we look at long-term studies, it seems to be more important how much protein you're taking over time than whether or not you're getting that 40 grams right after you train, which kind of indicates how that muscle remodeling process goes. So while it is true that there's only so much protein that your muscles can benefit from in any given time point, the area under the curve, if you will, of muscle protein synthesis over time is what's going to dictate actual hypertrophy. So I think it's probably better to not look at protein necessarily on a meal-to-meal basis initially. I think the first thing you want to do is set your daily intake and then think about, okay, what kind of distribution makes sense given I don't have a storage form of protein? And then also understand that it won't make that much of a difference because digestion kinetics take so long. So the best answer to that is set daily protein intake and divide it over at least 3 meals. And assuming that you have mixed meals, you're not in a calorie deficit, that will probably cover your bases. And then if you're, a hardcore strength athlete or someone who really wants to optimize body composition, I'd say get in at least 4 and make 2 of those happen on either end of your training. And you should be optimizing every theoretical and practical concern for protein intake.
Yeah, again, daily protein intake dictates.
For the most part, unless you're eating like 1 meal a day,
Yeah.